Nights. Huh? 2-0. 2 to go.
Josh, in talking to a couple of your players, they've mentioned a difference in OTAs. I'd like to ask you if it's a change in philosophy or if just last year you couldn't do it because you're installing a new system. But they said it was very clear to them your staff did a lot of self-scouting and have been teaching very detailed things, making changes in techniques, and they seem to love it. They're bragging about your coaches. As a coach, can you do anything better than get a roster full of guys that want to be coached and your coaches are doing it?
It'd be hard. I mean, the reality is all of us can do better, starting with me. And there's never been a season that you go through where you don't evaluate what you did and realize that, there were some mistakes that you made and a lot of things that you can do better. And our game is, I would say, evolving every year. And so if you don't evolve with it, sometimes you can just get run over. If you just stay stagnant and stay committed to something that may have worked, 7, 10, 12 years ago, it might not necessarily be the best thing to do anymore. I think there's certain techniques and fundamentals that will always be important and probably will always remain the same. But I know that our staff, we challenged ourselves in the spring when the players were away to really just go back and look at the things we did, the way we taught it, the pace that we implemented it at, the drills we were doing to try to get the things we wanted them to learn to stick. And I think the staff deserves the credit for that. They've done a good job of really trying to identify the right pace we should go at, the right volume that we should put in, and then the right ways to go about teaching those things. So we've definitely adjusted some things. I'm sure that we're not unique in that regard. I'm sure every other team is doing something similar. But there's definitely a change that we've tried to implement for the better. And if our players are saying the right things in that regard, it's not because we're telling them to. I hope that is what they feel because it's better for them.
Josh, up until this point, you guys have been involved in OTAs. Is it tangibly different these next 3 days compared to what you guys have been doing?
Not really. I think the difference, we have a little bit more time, so we're actually going to get to watch the film in the afternoon. Like, if you ask me the biggest difference between minicamp and OTAs now, you're allotted a little bit more time on the field. We're not taking a lot more than what we've been doing. But the biggest thing for us is we'll be able to correct the film today. That's the biggest change. OTAs is a little bit of a challenge in that regard, because I'd say most of the days of the year, you're actually going through the work day, and whatever you're doing, then you watch that film afterward, correct it, and try to move on and have a clean slate the next day. OTAs isn't always that way, because of the time limits that we have. So that's a good thing for everybody, so that we can start hopefully fresh tomorrow and just start on the new material, whatever it is, and get going. So a little bit more time to watch the film. We'll have a chance to. Today happens to be the red zone. We're going to end up working a little bit more in the red zone. So, but other than that, the practice format is very similar.
You mentioned pace earlier. How much different or how much more of a pace do you have from drill to drill now that it's year 2 for you and a lot of the returners?
Yeah, I think the guys, coaches and players, I think we all kind of know how we want to practice and work. We know the value of trying to get every ounce of work done that we're allotted in terms of the time limits that we have. So. The guys do a great job of moving them from drill to drill. The players have really done a nice job of getting the drill set up so we can go ahead and start the repetitions and try to get better. So I think everybody, your second year, your second go around, you kind of know more, understand more, and then there's a lot more players now that can help other players because they've lived through it for a year and a half. So hopefully it's an efficient practice.
I understand when guys aren't in pads and they're rookies, you can't make any evaluation. But I'd like to ask you about a UDFA, Drake Thomas. Mm-hmm. This is a guy probably should have been ACC Defensive Player of the Year. If he couple more inches, could have been second, third, first round guy. What is it about him you like?
Yep.
What have you seen so far as mentally picking up the game?
Yeah, loves football, works hard, and again, if you come into the league in that capacity, which he did, and we have, like I said, we have a number of players, half our roster is undrafted, so Those players understand, like, I gotta work my butt off. I gotta, really love every aspect of the game so I can try to improve. Every rep he takes is a very intentional rep for him, whether it's in an individual period, a group period, or a team period. Good communicator, learns quickly, really studies hard from one day to the next so he's prepared the next day, and a good teammate. You could tell the guys like him, look, everybody, we always tell them they're all the same once they're Raiders, and so it's not really about how you got here, it's what you do here. And so Drake's really embraced that along with a lot of the other guys that we have in that capacity. But there's a lot to like about him. He's a good football player, period. You know what I mean? If you look at how tall he is and all the rest of it, you can say a lot about a lot of guys in that capacity. But at the end of the day, when the ball snapped, he does a good job of making plays and doing his job.
Coach, I know it's still early, but in the grand scheme of things, how happy or pleased are you with your players' progress throughout training camp or leading into training camp and OTAs going to the mandatory meeting?
I like the way we work. Again, this isn't necessarily the time for us to stop and evaluate where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
We have so far to go in terms of progress individually, collectively as a team, that we really don't worry a whole lot about that at this point. Because again, we're not in pads. There's a whole different components of the game that we're going to get involved with here at the end of July. So, like the way they're working, love the attitude they bring every day to work. And I know we've made some progress. How much progress we'll all find out together eventually.
Josh, this time last year, the offensive line, you're kind of putting it together. It feels like it's a little bit more stable at this point. Do you feel that group is a little bit further ahead of where it was last year?
I think they know more as a group. If you talk to them, a lot of the guys are returning, so they have an ability. Again, we talked about this last week. Improvement doesn't necessarily come through acquisition. Our jobs as coaches are to improve the players each day. So I think as a unit, as a group, those guys, their communication's improved. Their overall understanding of what's being asked of them has improved. They work like crazy, so we couldn't ask anything more than what we're getting from them in that regard. So love their attitude, love their mindset. I think we're doing the same thing because offensive linemen, fortunately or unfortunately, don't get to necessarily work beside the same guy every rep all season long. So they're learning their teammates, they're getting comfortable communicating with one another, which is an important aspect at this time of the year. And hopefully all of them are growing.
On the back end of that question, two offensive linemen that played a lot last year, Dylan Parr and Bader Mumford, who were rookies, they had their growing pains, but they played well. What has kind of been the change of mindset, or I guess the improvement of comfortability going from last year going into this year to training camp?
I would say they probably would tell you that they know they're starting from a higher ground. They know more than they did last year at this time. Certainly, I think both of them have changed. Physically, they've been in an off-season program now, a full off-season program here. They understand more what it requires of them to go through an entire 17-game season plus 3 preseason games and not have your body, feeling the way that I'm sure most rookies feel at the end of the year. So there's a lot of things that they know now that they didn't last year. Again, we're going to need to see a lot of those guys translate those things in August where they can actually hit people, block, etc., pass protect. So there's a lot that we haven't been able to see, but I really like the way that they're working.
Josh, Brandon Parker. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What's the next step for Divine Diablo? What do you like with that group of linebacker overall?
Yeah, Divine's, he's I'm fond of Divine. I think he knows that, and we've given him a lot of responsibility. He's wearing the green dot, in practice, which is obviously a role that, young players, once they have that on their shoulders, now they're responsible for more than just their job. They have to communicate to everyone else. They have to be alert and aware of situational football because they're essentially the quarterback of the defense once you have that responsibility. So Divine's grown literally every week since I've seen him and known him. He works really hard at the game of football. I think he's embraced this year as a year that, is a growth year for him, not only on the field in terms of what he does on the field, but also how he can impact others. And I think that's something that you see from him every day.
Josh, piggybacking off of that, I had a player tell me that Divine was stepping up, telling guys where to go. They not only Patrick says he's bigger physically,
Yeah.
but guys said he seems to be more confident. Do you see that?
Yeah, I do. And again, with knowledge, comes comes that confidence in yourself, and also the confidence to tell your teammates if they ask a question. Like last year, I know we had a few younger players where somebody would ask them a question and there would be crickets, and that's a bad feeling if you're the guy asking the question. So Divine knows a lot more. He understands the whole scope of the defense. We're trying to get him to learn it from that perspective, so he can help others. Like I said, much like the quarterback, and he's embraced that.
Josh, I don't know how much you pay attention to the NBA right now, but the Miami Heat have a whole bunch of undrafted free agents that are contributing to in the championship run. So part of that is coaches being open to the fact that they might not be our draft pick, they might be the guy at the end of the line, but giving everybody an honest chance. Did you ever? Do you have to train yourself to get to that point as a coach where you're literally seeing everybody through the same kind of lens?
I don't think so. I didn't think of it that way. I think that, first of all, there's no way to put your roster together and have, 80, first, second, and third round draft picks, so your team is going to consist of a lot of different players that got to your roster in a lot of different ways. And so we tell them from the beginning, we're all Raiders now. This is 2023, we're all Raiders. It doesn't really matter how you got here. What matters is what you do once you're here. And to me, the best thing for us as coaches is to put the best 11 out there, not look at the status, how we acquired them, what round they were drafted in, what their salary says. Because if we're always trying to put the best 11 out there, then we're doing the right thing for the Raiders. If we're looking at other factors and playing the political game, that can get real, you're just not putting the best team on the field always. It might end up that way. But there's obviously this league has a long history of players that were drafted 5th, 6th, 7th round or beyond when the draft was longer and undrafted. And like I said, we have a number of players on our team that have had good early careers that weren't drafted, and in some like Brandon Bolden, notice this year 12 or 13. He wasn't drafted. So everybody has the same opportunity. Everybody's going to get reps, and we're going to coach them all the same. And I think that's a good thing. If you're a player, you want to hear that, that, hey, the opportunity is the same for me as it is for somebody that was drafted a lot earlier than I was. And hopefully we do the right thing and pick the right players.
Josh,
Go.
with
Go ahead, Paul.
minicamp being mandatory and OTAs being voluntary, what's the attendance been like for minicamp thus far? I know you're just starting it.
You're talking about today?
Yeah. And
JJ's the only one that's not under contract.
Okay.
So everybody's here. So we have 90 because we have the international, because David Ogoha is in the international program. So we actually have 90 here, and that's what we would have expected.
So what is the latest with Josh that he just hasn't signed his
Yeah, the deadline is not until July. So again, I respect everything about that process. This is not the first time that that's happened in terms of me being a part of that. So. Like I said, I stand by what I said before. Love the kid, love the player, love the person, and look forward to when I see him.
Let's go Omar, Adam, Vic, and then Honda.
Hey, you mentioned, Josh, the undrafted free agents wanting to hear that, the opportunity. You also had a couple of star players a couple of weeks ago talk about the buy-in and kind of believing in what you and Dave have built here. After a disappointing year in year one, how do you get that buy-in? How did you get these guys to kind of fully get on board and kind of build that culture here?
I think the first thing we all have to do is be accountable, and that starts with me. In ways that I can do a better job of trying to do my job and help them be a better football team, help them be better players. I think our staff did the same thing, took a good look at ourselves. What can we do better to help our team? We're in a lot of close games. That's been very well documented. So when you're in those kind of close games, you're always fighting to figure out how you can finish them on the right end. And so, we've made some changes that we hope would be for the better. We've also, been trying to be accountable to our responsibility and role in that. And I think being honest with the players and having great lines of communication with them is always the right thing to do. Tell them the truth, encourage them. We have a great working environment, positive attitude, great leadership on our team, and so we've just tried to feed into that, and we're working really hard. We got a long way to go. Nothing's been accomplished yet, but I think the right things are at least being attempted at this point in time of the year, and we're going to try to continue to do that here going into training camp.
Josh, I know a bunch of players have been out of the Knights games the last couple of nights, and obviously the Aces are doing what they're doing. Is there anything about like the sports momentum and maybe being a part of that can help you guys and kind of build the culture you're trying to build?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very exciting time for Las Vegas, and being in this town now with multiple pro sports teams and seeing them have success and supporting them the way that we're trying to do that. I know a number of our players were there Saturday, and now a number of them were there last night. I think it's just, I think they get excited, when they see, that's what we're trying to do, and we all know what we're trying to build here and the type of success we're looking to have and hopefully sustain. So I think it's been incredible to be able to support them and witness it. I'm not going to say it's not over yet. It's not over yet. They got 2 to go, and Coach Cassidy will be the first one to say that. But I think our guys have really taken to it.
I was asking about Tyler Hall. What do you see from him from last year, this year, and the improvements, I guess? Again,
Tyler was a guy we got a little later, and so being able to be here and understand the entire offseason, the defense in its entirety, really have an opportunity to experience every day in the offseason, I think is great for young players. Tyler's very diligent. He works really hard. He's smart. He knows his job. He knows really how his job fits in the whole entire context of the team. Very competitive. As you saw last year, when he got in there, like he made an impact right away in certain ways, and I expect nothing different this year. He's a very competitive player that made an impact for us on our roster last year, and I'm excited to see what he can do this year.
Josh, Brandon Parker is a guy you didn't get to use last year, but you've kept him around for a reason. Will you talk about what you saw in him that made you believe in him to keep him?
Yep.
And maybe what you've seen through OTAs, granted no pads, but just what you see.
Yep. He's first of all, he's a great human being, and these are the kind of guys you want to have in your locker room. They help everybody. He works his butt off. He sets a great example for others. He's improved significantly in his own ways in the weight room this off season, which is a tribute to him and the type of work ethic that he has. And came back from the injury last year, which took a while, for an offensive lineman to do that, and then really has had an impressive off season. Very unselfish, understands like tackles. We use them both at left and right, just to give them, the opportunity to compete at all those spots, and embraces his role, embraces his opportunities, helps his teammates, communicates well with others. Just a good pro, and it was unfortunate that happened last year because we were right kind of starting the competition, if you will, but excited for Brandon to have an opportunity to insert himself in there and see where it goes.
Great, thank you, Coach. Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Thanks a lot,
Okay.
Josh.
Thank you.